Good morning, everybody. Some of you may have heard of a class known as the Monk class. It's the standard expert of martial arts, and it has mixed reviews most of the time. Now, Monk has a lot of very powerful builds. However, by the same token, it also has some not so great builds, and traditionally those have been the hand wrap builds. Now, it is important to note that there actually are some very strong, super well-geared endgame hand wrap builds that can do incredible damage using Monk. However, generally for the leveling process, Fist Monk really falls behind Staff Monk in terms of just general feel, viability, and usability. Now, it's also important to note that there's a lot of reasons for this. First, Fist Monk is largely single target. Yes, you could get Whirlwind Attack, but especially if you're playing a First Life character, that means you need Dexterity, Intelligence, and like 17 feats. It was way too much. Even though, yes, it is accessible for a lot of monks, if you weren't playing as a human monk, you didn't even get your Whirlwind Attack until way later, or you gave up on other important early leveling feats. And second is self-healing. While the Fist Monk does get some good bonuses to self-healing, getting extra devotion, spell power, and healing amplification to really bump up that healing key, Staff Monk got Shadows Cannot Exist Without Light, an attack that heals you for 100 every time you use it, and it is affected by Strike Through, so if you hit 3 targets, you heal for 300. Oh, and it has a 6-second cooldown, so you're constantly just pumping out AoE healing, like an AoE healing god. So for a very long time, I, myself, and many others, haven't really played a lot of Fist Monk. However, with the release of Update 56, there were 2 major changes that came into play. The first is that Whirlwind Attack no longer needs combat expertise or Spring Attack, now it's just dodge, mobility, and Whirlwind Attack. This is massive because monks get tons of free feats, so the 2 feat cost isn't really that big of a deal, allowing you to take Whirlwind Attack pretty early and cleave down your foes. And because you don't need the intelligence anymore, it means that you can leave your intelligence at an 8 on a pure monk and still have good dex and wisdom for both having dex to hit and damage and wisdom for all your abilities on like a fully free-to-play monk. It also means that if you decide to go into the Falconry tree and pick up the wisdom to hit and damage and focus entirely on wisdom, you'll still have enough points, even as a no-tomes first lifer, to be able to easily get enough dexterity and wisdom to be comfortable in terms of both taking all your feats, having good defense, and actually landing your DCs. And the second change, which was mentioned in my Razor Claw Shifter video, is that hand wraps were buffed. Now with the new feat Swords to Plowshares, well, it's not a new feat, but the new addition to the feat Swords to Plowshares, hand wraps gain additional critical threat range, giving you 5% more critical strike chance. This might not sound like a big deal because 5% is 5%, but it's actually really huge, getting you so much more damage. On top of that, in epics, there are a lot of abilities that scale off of critical strike, meaning you deal additional damage or they have additional effects based on critical strike. So being able to crit more makes a huge difference. So I thought to myself, hey, I did the Sacred Fist, I did the Razor Claw, so let's slam through some Monk. And I gotta say, it was way better than I thought it was going to be. I played as a Tabaxi so I could max out my Wisdom and my Dexterity, and pretty much left my Constitution and all my other stats to rot. And I mostly ran as a Dexterity-based monk for the large part of it and ignored the Falconry tree for a bit, just because I figured if I started with a 20 Dexterity, I was pumping Wisdom over time, but for the general heroic process, I didn't really need to worry about my Wisdom too much, because as long as I had a stunning item and I had some Wisdom, I really didn't have an issue actually being able to land most of my crowd control effects. However, having a good Dexterity so I could take all the 2 weapon fighting feats and mostly running in Fire Stance actually meant I had a near infinite amount of ki, allowing me to just blast out ki ability after ki ability, which in this case was just alternating between Stunning Fist and Fists of Light. Being able to just use Stunning Fist whenever you want and all of the other ki abilities feels amazing, and I can't recommend going in Fire Stance enough. Now, generally, you can get an improved key item here and there. Whether it's at level 12, you can pick up an Ichthenore's Signet Ring, or out of Sharn at level 15, you're able to pick up the Moonrise Racers, or other enhanced key items as you go up. Before you get to level 12, really, Fire Stance is the game-winning play here. So I would recommend being in Fire Stance, and since Fire Stance does lower your Wisdom, unless you have past lives or tomes or other things to make up for it, being Dexterity to hit and damage is pretty good. Now, hand wraps don't get Dexterity to hit and damage. As a baseline, you have to take that out of the Ninja Spy tree, but it's only the first 2 cores, so only a total of 6 points, and you can have that by level 3, so you won't really notice too much of a problem. Now the question is, how did it feel as I got higher level? Well, once I got into epics, the character still felt pretty good. I flipped around between the different trees. I couldn't figure which Epic Destiny was the best one for me. I tried Legendary Dreadnought, I tried Divine Crusader, I tried Grandmaster of Flowers, and here's what I'll say. I do think that Dire Charge is a good option, but this character is really lacking on, well, burst damage. You have good single target, but your burst kinda sucks on a Fist Monk. So the only way I could think to remedy this was to use the Drifting Lotus attack. Now, Drifting Lotus is the monk attack out of Grandmaster of Flowers. It costs key, cool animation. If you use it with 2-weapon fighting, single weapon fighting, or a 2-handed weapon, your character will do a cool animation and hit 3 times. However, with hand wraps, for whatever reason, you only hit once, meaning it's 1/3 as effective. However, being 1/3 as effective, I still found it was the best option in terms of being able to both stun monsters as well as deal a good amount of damage. However, in terms of the consistency, I did find Legendary Dreadnought's Dire Charge was a lot better. Fatesinger wasn't the best option. It wasn't bad because it gave a lot of early damage. However, the cleave attack that stuns doesn't scale off of wisdom, so that made it a little bit tougher. I could have scaled it off of dexterity, which would have been fine. And you can also play monk fully as dexterity as well if you want to, as opposed to scaling in the wisdom, just having a little bit on the side. And Divine Crusader just didn't really feel like it was the right place. I did like the healing aspect. I liked the buffing aspect, but I didn't actually take it all the way to the tier 5. I mostly used it for leveling, and even with the Sunder, the stun that you can get on top of it, I really felt like it was better to go with the stunning area, so that's where Legendary Dreadnought and Grandmaster kind of came in. So I ended up going with the whole Dreadnought tree with the Dread Mantle. However, I went to Grandmaster Flowers to pick up both the Drifting Lotus Epic Strike and its stun, as well as the ability to allow Stunning Fist to count as a light attack, so I could get really, really fast healing ki. However, this character gets even more powerful. You can cast Healing Ki on anybody you want, not just yourself. You can cast it at range, which means at endgame, now that Epic Defensive Fighting has been removed, you're able to cast Healing Ki on people at range and build up Healing Ki very, very quickly. So in higher Reaper mode, it works really, really well to be able to just be an off healer, or especially in between fights, or when the healer just takes a little bit of damage, or if there's like a Fear Reaper, you can just kind of spam the stuff out, and it actually felt pretty powerful. Now, I did do some high Reaper with this character, around mostly Reaper 7 and 8. I didn't do any R10s. I just didn't really have the patience to sit around and try to get people for R10s, so we did some R7s and 8s. And overall, my character felt like it played pretty good. The damage was pretty solid. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen, but it got the job done. Really, where it felt good was in the defensive capability, given the fact that my character had around a 40% dodge and about 150-ish armor class, even with not the greatest gear. And on top of that, a reasonable amount of physical resistance rating, although I could have pumped that up if it actually fully geared out the character. But where it felt the best was the crowd control. Having access to Tomb of Jade, Jade Strike, Kukendo, and Stunning Fist, as well as Drifting Lotus for the AoE stun, I felt like my character always had something I could do to help out the team. So for me personally, I had a great time, and way better of a time than I was expecting. So if you haven't tried Monk in a long time, you're worried about the leveling process, it's been greatly improved, and I can't recommend it enough. If you're worried about like the epic experience, a lot of the different trees work, and I wouldn't say you have to just stick into one. Heck, if you even wanted to, you could go into the Shadow Dancer tree, pick up more sneak attack, and kind of double up on the sneak attack damage, which I know a lot of people are doing that for the high scaling endgame damage. And finally, as far as the actual R10s go, it felt great. Well, R7s anyway. I'm assuming it would still feel good in R10s if you had just a bit higher DCs and actually fully geared out with some better filigrees than I was using, and actually having some items that aren't crafted in your inventory, like Kenneth crafted. So if you have slept on Monk, please give it a try. I'm going to be posting a build, both my build and also a version that's like more free to, like very, very free to play oriented if you want to try that out. So you can test out Monk for yourself, as Fist Monk was very good and treated me very well. However, if you want to see me build it right now, I'm going to pass it over to me with the build. If you want to play Razor Claw Shifter, but actually be good, consider Fist Monk. Fist Monk is a character that I just recently played through the game, 1 to 32. I also ran some High Reaper mode with it, just some R7s, so nothing like super crazy, but it performed pretty well. And overall, my experience with Fist Monk has been great. And so I want to show you some of the key highlights about building the character. Now, in my opinion, your general experience with Fist Monk is going to be a wisdom-based Fist Monk, but one of the key tenets I think that's more important to your monk experience is actually having a trance. So with this character, that is me taking Falconry for a Deadly Instinct, because this gives a huge amount of extra damage, but also DCs of tactical feats, which you kind of need. However, if you do not want to use this, you can also use Horizon Walker and go Dexterity with no misstep. Both are pretty good, although your DCs for your tactical feats, especially the Shintao ones, are going to be scaling pretty heavily with the actual Dexterity that you have, so or with the Wisdom that you have versus Dexterity, so Wisdom is going to be your general goal, and that's what I went here. It's important to note that you need enough dexterity to be able to take all the 2-weapon fighting feats while you level up. I, since I'm a Tabaxi with past lives, started with a 20 dex and an 18 wisdom because I said, screw it, why not? Although you might want to start with maybe an 18 dex and maybe like a 16 wisdom if you have fewer points. And I dumped Constitution because I was like, yeah, if I can kill the monsters first, I don't have to worry about it. As far as skills go, your skills don't matter. Just make sure you have concentration. Jump is also nice since monks don't have, they don't have any spells they can cast for that, so jump is convenient. Spot is cool because by leveling up spot, you can see everything because you have a high wisdom, so it just kind of goes together. And use magic device is also nice just for being able to like use wands and scrolls and stuff during the leveling process. I also put 1 point in tumble so that I can tumble, and that's about it, even though I have slow falling, which reduces the damage. As far as the feats go, the main thing I want to shout out here is Whirlwind Attack. Whirlwind Attack you can pick up as early as level 6, and I would recommend you get that as early as level 6. This ability is so incredibly good. It hits once at the beginning and once at the end. It's very, very, very strong, and I would definitely recommend having Whirlwind Attack here. Outside of that, Stunning Fist is amazing. Swords to Plowshares gives you the extra critical threat range on hand wraps. You got to pick that one up. It's basically as good as improved critical bludgeoning. I use Precision because I want to be able to hit more often. And then I took Fists of Light for the Monk Harmonious Balance feat here, because by using Fists of Light, it allows me to heal whenever I hit foes, as well as pumping out healing ki. And of course, for combat style, we took the 2 weapon fighting feats. As far as the epic feats go, Improved Martial Arts and Vorpal Strikes are 2 monk-specific things that both require high wisdom. Actually, I don't think the Martial Arts does, but Vorpal Strikes does. Because I'm a wisdom-based monk, I wanted to take Vorpal Strikes, just because there's too many situations where it's nice to have slashing damage as well. There's a reasonable amount of zombies throughout the game, and it can be convenient through epics, so I did take both of them. You don't need Vorpal Strikes, though. If you don't have the wisdom for it, don't worry about it. Overwhelming Critical is quite good, and then I took Epic Damage Reduction. You can also take any feat that gives you no fail saves on a 1, because your saving throws are all going to be pretty good most of the time. That's not including in-combat buffs, or even, like, I don't have a resistance item on, so you can get better than this for sure. As far as the Epic Destiny feats went, I went Tactician, Perfect 2 Weapon Fighting, Double Strike, and Crush Weakness. Now, you don't have to take Tactician, but I took it for 2 reasons. 1, I wanted to have the extra DCs, and 2, I needed the hit chance. My character ended up around 180 hit chance with this build, and I think that I could do better. I'd like to be closer to 200, but I do have Armor Destruction on this character, which kind of helps balance it out a bit. But you don't need to take Tactician for sure. It's just nice to have. And then for Legendary feat, Sign of the Astral Plane, it gives Dodge Cap, it gives Double Strike, just fantastic and useful. So looking at the enhancements here, I'm playing as a Tabaxi. By the way, you don't have to play as a Tabaxi. I just wanted to play one because it's Kitty Cat. It's Tabaxi Tuesday, so I've just decided to play as a Tabaxi when I made it. And that's about it. They have a cool animation, but you don't really need to be one. All I get out of here is the extra sneak attack dice and +1 to hit. Nothing amazing and not necessary. Any race is perfectly fine. But things that are important, Shintao, take all the good stuff. You want everything on the left side here. You don't want to be picking up the extra Iron Skin, Fist of Iron, an ability I took and never used. Not because it's bad. It's a good ability. I just never used it. I never actually put it on my track. I forgot I took it. The Smite line, which is mostly just Jade Strike and Tomb of Jade. Jade Strike increases damage the monsters take by 10%. So you want to hit this on pretty much everything you can. Also, if you crit, it Jades them. And then Tomb of Jade Jades them. And it works on Reapers. So you want to use that all the time. It's like one of the best crowd control abilities in the game. That's why it has a 1-minute cooldown. Kukendo also works on Reapers. And I should have used it more often. I did use this relatively regularly, but I could stand to use it more often. Now, what you're going to notice is 10 key, 25 key, 25 key. A lot of key costing abilities out here, especially with your healing key and the Fist of Light and stuff. So you're going to want to have at least one thing that gives you increased key generation. Usually that will be like an Ichthon or Signet ring during the leveling process. Later on, you can get items that give you alchemical conservation as a bonus. You can get enhanced key items out of Sharn and a few other places. My recommendation for endgame, you want to get the Essence of the Cracked Core. It's an augment you can get from the Cracked Core item, which I think comes from Project Nemesis. And what it does is it gives you +1 key per hit, and it's an augment, so you just put it onto whatever gear you need, and you're going to feel very powerful. So that should be pretty good. As far as where the rest of the points went, originally during the leveling process, I wasn't actually using Falconry. I had most of my points in Tabaxi, and I leveled with Tabaxi. Because I liked the movement speed, it was pretty fun to like run around. However, this is where I would set up for the late game. Visanian Knife Fighter giving you the haste boost as well as the double strike just makes a lot of sense. And then Falconry, being able to pick up the Wisdom to hit and damage here, as well as Deadly Instinct, is insanely useful. Now, during the leveling process, because I was a Tabaxi and I started with 20 Dex and 18 Wisdom, because I'm an idiot, I actually didn't use Falconry until Epics, because instead, I was just using Ninja Spy and using Dex to hit and damage early. I would honestly recommend this in most cases, as opposed to going up Falconry quickly. Just spend the points in Ninja Spy for the sneak attack damage, use Dex to hit and damage for the first few levels, and then eventually swap out into Falconry. That way you can get some of the good stuff out of Shintao, like the iron skin for the physical resistance rating. You can get the extra attacks with offhand weapons. You can maybe pick up some racial stuff. I'd recommend doing that before you go directly into falconry. But the falconry was essential because the amount of power you get from Deadly Instinct is huge. On top of that, picking up 30% extra damage versus the Helpless, I mean, that's just nice too. That's pretty freaking good. Now, in epics, where do you put your points? I'm kind of torn. I don't know what the best answer is, but I'll give you my observations. I tried out 3 things: Legendary Dreadnought and Legendary Dreadnought and Grandmaster Flower. Sorry, 2 things. I wanted to go with Fatesinger. Turns out Fatesinger doesn't scale with Wisdom. Hilarious. So as much as I think Fatesinger and Strike Accord is very strong, it doesn't work with Wisdom. It's the only stat it doesn't work with, so you have to do something else. So instead, we are Legendary Dreadnought here, not using the actual attack Dire Charge and using Drifting Lotus. I started out using Dire Charge and I thought it would be quite good, but as I got further into it, I kind of didn't really value the extra knockdown as much as I valued the extra damage from Drifting Lotus. Drifting Lotus is a 3-second longer cooldown, but you can actually one-shot people with this, whereas Dire Charge will just stun things and it won't do any like one-shotting. So I opted to do that. Additionally, I also wanted to pick up the Philosophy Light. The reason why this is really good is because it means I can use Stunning Fist and Fist of Light in quick succession to get my Healing Key active right away, and this was very, very useful in the end game, just constantly pulping out Healing Key in combat. While just fighting a boss, I can Fist of Light, Stunning Fist, and Fist of Light over the course of 3 seconds, then Healing Key, and then do it again, and then do it again. It pretty much triples the speed at which you can get out your Fist of Light, so I would highly recommend taking this when you get the opportunity. And the rest of the stuff in Dreadnought's pretty self-explanatory. The Dread Mantle is really good because it gives -1 armor class when you attack targets, and you actually need this on your character because you don't have as much hit. I also took a Yielding Sentinel, and I grabbed Renewal. That's just because my character's... I don't have all the past lives in this character. I don't have all of the Reaper points. I don't have all the Destiny points. So I didn't see the value in getting some of the things. If you have more Destiny points than this, so if you're around like 70, 71, instead of using Unyielding Sentinel, go with Shadow Dancer instead. Pick up the sneak attack damage. It's going to get a little bit more bang for your buck, and you'll probably have more defensive stats than I would because of your additional past lives. And then finally, as far as like itemization goes, I'll post an item list in the bottom for what I ended up using. There's probably something, or there's definitely something more optimized than this, but for the most part, the key thing I want to note here is the Dinosaur Bone weapon. I haven't posted a lot of Dinosaur Bone crafted weapons because I haven't really done a lot of the Dinosaur Bone crafting other than talking about it. But basically, there's a couple of things I wanted to point out here. I'll probably make a video about Dinosaur Bone crafting in the future, but until then, if you're playing a melee, you want the Melt Horn. Melt Horn makes it so your attacks and offensive spells have a chance to reduce enemies' physical resistance rating, and this goes up to a total of 35%, meaning you do 35% more damage when you fight monsters. That's really good. So nothing else on here. The 15 d6s of acid damage is not even like half of this. And this scales with melee power and everything else and critical strikes. So the 35% extra damage that monsters take is super, super, super duper good. Outside of that, Ice Claw is pretty good. Oh, and Melt Fang. Melt Horn and Melt Fang are kind of like really good on a melee. Melt Fang is really powerful because it allows your weapons to deal acid damage over time. And it might not sound like a lot, but this ends up being hundreds of damage really, really quickly. And it just constantly reapplies. It's definitely very, very nice to have. So, Dinosaur Bone crafting, very good. Helped out quite a bit here. Outside of that, I'm using part of the family set because it was easy. I had another character, so I just kind of swapped that over. I'm also using the Raven Eye set because I've had this item for a while. So Raven Eye goggles plus a gem of many facets with the Raven Eye set on it as well. I like this because I can craft it out for depending on the character that I'm actually playing. And the set bonus is nice with attack and damage, crit and confirmation, sneak attack and sneak attack damage. It's only +3, which is not a lot, but it's basically all the damage effects in the game, which is pretty nice. I'm also using the Defender's Cloak just because I needed a Wisdom item, and this also gives equipped healing amplification, which stacks with regular healing amplification, which is fun. The Belt of Sure Strikes, because this is one of the few sources of quality accuracy in the game. So with the Celestial Ruby Ring giving accuracy, my Helmet Umber Brim giving insightful, and then quality, I have all the accuracy in the game, so I'm at 165 standing, which can go even higher if I actually have my in-combat buffs. I did need an artifact, and I couldn't think of what to use, and I didn't want to farm out a Radiant Ring of Terra Valesta, so I was kind of lazy. So I just have this uncrafted Dinosaur Bone Ring. It has literally nothing on it. I just wanted to put some filigrees in there so I could use Prowess as well as some of the extra Wisdom filigrees. So you can definitely do better than this. I will try when I post the actual build for this to post a real artifact and not just an empty Dinosaur Bone Ring. But that's what I was using, and it was good enough. In general, if you're playing monk, just bear in mind you want to be looking for items to give you like wisdom, dexterity, constitution, hit chance, accuracy, deadly, seeker, devotion spell power for healing key, and then all the good defenses: physical resistance rating, magical resistance rating, resistances, bonus to saving throws, movement speed, freedom of movement is another good effect. True seeing you want to have somewhere. Stunning bonuses for stunning fist because it works on all your stunning abilities. A ghostly effect. I think that's pretty much it. I think it's literally every stat. Oh, healing amplification, fortification, yeah, false life. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's all the stuff. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Anyways, that's how I would do it. You want to play monk? It's pretty good. I had a lot of fun with it. I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought I was going to. And ended up being like just so strong and so fun. So give it a shot. Try it out. Monk is super good right now. And I just had a blast. But that's all I have for you today. So thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, make sure you subscribe to that follow button and channel that bell. See you next time on the next video where I make a character that does more damage than this and is faster. Because the next character is Alchemist, and Alchemist is really busted. And now I wave. And then that's it.